Do you like pancakes?
Hell yeah.
I like stacks of pancakes.
Stacks on stacks.
Stacks on stacks of pancakes. And speaking of stacks, NVIDIA's 20 series GPU's got a stack of Super Series refreshes, and now is the time for the 16 series to get the same thing. Now you might be asking yourself, why does this GPU even exist? And to be honest, I'm kind of asking myself the same question. Now there are a few subtle differences between the 1660 Super, the 1660 and the 1660 Ti, so let's find out what they are. Gigabyte sent over their GTX 1660 Super Gaming OC to check out for the launch of the new 1660 Super Series GPUs. And yeah, the 1660 Super has a new trick up its sleeve, and it's a little bit different to the 1660 and the 1660 Ti. It now has 6 gigs of GDDR6, whereas the others have GDDR5. In this video, we're just going to keep it short and sweet, and we're going to see how the 1660 Super performs in our regular suite of benchmarks. Now, the way we're doing this is we're using our regular GPU test system, which is running the Gigabyte Z370 Aorus Ultra Gaming with the i7-8700K and 16 gigs of XPG GAMX D30 at 3200 MHz. We included some other cards that we've tested recently to give the 1660 Super a little bit of context. We don't include 1% highs or lows with these tests because it would just introduce a whole lot of extra testing, and I personally feel that getting the average frame rate gives you a good indication of the expected performance anyway. We use 3 benchmarks, all that use GPUs in different ways, to see what the performance looks like in different situations. We use these benchmarks for every single GPU benchmarking video, so you can check out any of our other GPU videos and compare the GPU that we're testing in this video to any GPU that we've tested in the last probably 12 months. Now, we like to use testing that's repeatable and standardized. We don't like gameplay testing because those results can't be repeated and have way too many variables and ultimately are very unreliable. Now, we want the only variable in all of our testing to be the GPU and not a bit of gameplay on a certain map from a certain game that about 3 people play. And I know many people don't like the way that we tested, but to be honest, I don't care. And yeah, our way is pretty accurate and it's really repeatable. So with all that said, let's kick it off with Shadow of the Tomb Raider. For the 1080p test, we saw the 1660 Super get an average score of 95 frames per second. For the 1440p test, we saw the 1660 Super get an average score of 64 frames per second. For the 4K test, we saw the 1660 Super get an average score of 34 frames per second. The 1660 Super was slightly faster in Shadow of the Tomb Raider, but not by much, and it's kind of inside that margin of error, and as you're about to see, those results are not echoed in the other testing. With that said, let's move on to Unigine Superposition. For the Superposition test, we performed 3 tests in total. We used the 4K optimized preset, the 1080p extreme preset, and a custom 1440p preset with depth of field and motion blur turned off. Let's see what happened. For the 1440p custom test, we saw the 1660 Super get an average score of 81 frames per second. For the 4K optimized test, we saw the 1660 Super get an average score of 37 frames per second. For the 1080p extreme test, we saw the 1660 Super get an average score of 25 frames per second. Alright, we're coming to the end. The last batch of tests is with the Final Fantasy 15 benchmarking tool. This is an updated version of the tool that's a lot more optimized and it's way more accurate than it used to be. So let's see what happened. For the 1080p test, we saw the 1660 Super render a total amount of 6,844 frames. For the 1440p test, we saw the 1660 Super render a total amount of 4,963 frames. For the 4K test, we saw the 1660 Super render a total amount of 2,783 frames. Based on those results, the 1660 Super is looking like it's about on par with the 1660 Ti, although it's slightly slower in most of the benchmarks. And I think the difference between the two cards is you're probably paying around maybe 20 to 50 Aussie dollars less, or around 15 to 30 US dollars less for it than the 1660 Ti. Cooling wise, while running all of our testing, the 1660 Super Gaming OC, it maxed out at around 65 degrees, and yeah, that's on an open air test bench in our climate controlled office, which has an ambient temperature of 18 degrees. The fan speed didn't exceed 52% on the automatic fan curve, and the fan noise was pretty minimal and not loud at all. But yeah, like I always say, I didn't sit around testing thermals and acoustics because of the open air test bench, but since you guys literally always ask, I thought that I might just mention it anyway. As time goes on with the 16 series cards, I think they're a little bit more compelling than they were at launch. For 1080p gaming, I think they're looking a little bit more attractive, considering on the used market, if you look at something like a GTX 1070 Ti, at least in Australia, the 1070 Ti is usually a little bit more expensive than a new 1660 Super, and yeah, the performance is about the same as well. So I know that I would personally pick a brand new card, and to be honest, the jury's still out on whether or not the 1660 Super is something that I would consider, considering we haven't got our hands on the Radeon 5500 cards yet. But yeah, around the 1660 Super is looking at, it's probably around the good entry point for 1080p gaming. The Gigabyte GTX 1660 Super is going for around 439 Aussie dollars, or around 300 US dollars at the time of filming this video. There's a link in the description if you want to grab one of these cards for yourself. If you like this video, please like and subscribe. If you didn't like this video, you know what to do. Do what the internet always does. Tell us what you hated about it. Once again, thank you so very much for watching. I'm your boy Nick with Gear Seekers. You peek, we seek. And I want your opinions on these lower end or kind of mid-range 1080p focused gaming cards. Personally, I don't use them because, yeah, I'm a bit spoilt for choice, but I want to know some real feedback for people who are using these GPUs. Let us know in the comments or come and join us on Discord. I'm actually very, very curious to hear your opinions and thoughts. Thanks for watching.